Through interactions such as this, we at the Hindu Center hope to advance public debate and public discussion on critical political and public policy issues of the day. We are most thankful to Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan for coming here to share his thoughts, ideas, and experiences from within the political process as an outsider. And I say an outsider because, as you all know, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan is a remarkable personality, trained as a doctor, worked as an administrator, and gave up both these paths to now take to politics, forming a political party and entering the legislature as well. Most of us, when we see the degradation of standards in politics, the lowering of ethical values, we wring our hands in despair and bemoan the fall from the sidelines, but not so Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. He has entered politics with the motto that the answer to bad politics is good politics and not no politics or generally attacking politicians as a whole. How successful he will be in changing the system from within, in trying to reform the system with empathy rather than with hostility, will be known in due course. But in his remarkable career, he has already won many battles and achieved many gains. Among the areas where he has sought to play a significant role, a transformative role, is education, where he empowered parents in keeping a watch over schools, fuller disclosure of details about elected officials and candidates, rehabilitation of people displaced by the Sardar Sarovar project and development of Hyderabad as a high-tech city. Many other initiatives of his are also noteworthy, and I'm sure you will be talking about these. The subject he has chosen to address today is electoral reform, in particular, ways to curb the play of money in elections. We have the largest electoral system in the world, and we take pride in the relatively violence-free elections and the smooth transfers of power that have taken place in both the center and the state governments. Yet, there has been an alarming rise in the influence of money on elections. While the measures introduced by the Election Commission have succeeded in curbing ostentatious and overt spending on public campaigning, the money has moved underground through payments to party workers and party leaders to bring in the votes, and at times in the form of gifts and bribes to the voters directly. As a result, spending in elections has been rising manifold over the last 2 decades, and the figure of 8 crores mentioned by a political leader in Maharashtra will most likely be dwarfed in 2014, raising the question if it is at all possible to fight elections innocently. Innocently, that is, staying within the 4 corners of the law. The magnitude of the problem that Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan is going to address today is thus very clear, and we look forward to hearing his ideas. Let me once again welcome you all to this lecture and discussion session on behalf of the Center and on behalf of Dr. Malini Pasari, the Director, who unfortunately is out of the country at this time.
This is an unusual audience. I don't have to really state the facts. So it's more about whether the analysis of the facts leads to some sensible points of intervention, or will it lead to more angst in us. And therefore I choose to really take a particular course, lead us with the known facts, all of us know, with minor variations, we all agree on the facts. Are there some points of convergence? Are there some ways by which we can actually make a difference to the political system of this country? Because we're all deeply concerned about it. And Mr. Ravi made a very important point. Is it empathy or hostility? Should we regard all politicians from a panchayat sarpanch to the national leaders as crooks and undesirable, untouchable elements? Or should we really understand the system and its compulsions, and therefore should we help them get out of some of these vicious cycles? Obviously, my preferred option is the Hindus' preferred option, one of moderation, one of balance, one of respect for institutions, one of respect for democracy itself as a concept, and yet getting something out of it as an outcome, because it's not enough to be romantically in favor of democracy when the outcomes are unsatisfactory. With those caveats, let me start off with Gladstone, because for much of what I am addressing, what Loksatta has been attempting to do over the past 16 plus years, this is the heart of it. I think Gladstone captured it really. If indeed we live in a world of moral giants who would become leaders, then we don't require really anything. No system is required, no laws are required, no institutions are required. And that's what Plato argued. And Plato said, if philosophers are kings and kings are philosophers, there is no need for laws. But we often forget Plato's much more important but much less understood, a much less read book, The Laws, later on in his life, because by the time he realized that the philosopher need not become the king. And if indeed a philosopher does become a king, he need not remain a philosopher while being a king. It's very rare that a king actually remains a philosopher after having tasted kingdom or kingship. And third, perhaps even more important, even if the philosopher remains a king or king remains a philosopher, it is unlikely that he will be able to impact the billions and millions of human beings merely by virtue of his personality. For some time, on a particular occasion, maybe. But forever, in every sphere of human endeavor, unlikely. And therefore, you require institutions, systems, and laws. If you don't accept that premise, everything about organized government and society fails. It's all about morality and individuals, and you don't require anything. Obviously, the argument is not against values and morality. The argument is about building a climate and infrastructure of institutions and a framework which sustains and nurtures morality or desirable behavior as an outcome. That is the essence of what, that's why I'm taking some time on this slide. I loved what Gladstone said. The purpose of a government is to make it easy for people to do good and difficult to do evil. I think each of us can come up with 100 examples where the exact opposite obtains in this country. If you want to get a birth certificate or a ration card or a water connection in Chennai or a power connection for a house completed, each of us have to go through hell. In some cases, probably things are getting better. Birth certificate, I'm sure, with increasing computerization, things are getting better. But I don't think power connection, water connection, things are significantly better yet. We all know. And then blaming people about corruption, that he bribed somebody, doesn't really make any sense. We have to do something to set things right. I'm a great admirer of the accomplishments of our democracy. Myron Weiner, he said, for a functioning democracy, these are the four yardsticks. Competitive elections, political freedoms for all, peaceful transfer of power, and no retribution. The winners do not punish losers merely because of the fact that they lost an election. And real power is vested in the elected governments, not in a janta or a coterie. I think by all these four yardsticks, we are a remarkable success, one of the few great successes after the Second World War. But we also recognize that there are problems. I just put them quickly in a nutshell. We can move on quickly. Positive power is restricted. You go to any functionary in the country, a district collector who was earlier your ward or your friend or colleague, you go to him and say, you're a nice guy, you're elected, selected in a very competitive process, you're ethical, you're competent, you're well qualified, and yet under your charge, in your agency or in your district, there's so much of corruption, so much of delay, so much of inefficiency. You go to him with a problem, and by the time you come out of his room, your shirt sleeves will be wet with his tears. Because he has so many alibis for non-performance. He has so many realistic, plausible reasons why he's not able to deliver. And they're all real. There's nothing which is imagination. You go to a minister, a chief minister, a prime minister, everywhere you see the same thing. The positive power is restricted, but if power is defined as the power to abuse public office for private gain, then almost everybody from a chaprasi to the head of the state seems to have abundant, unrestricted power. There is a structural issue here. And of course, all state organs are dysfunctional. It's not merely one. I mean, in our exuberance, sometimes we think if only the courts are burdened with everything, India will be well off. It is the courts that have caused, in part, our current account deficit because they refuse to allow any kind of mining anywhere. This infamous case of Shakti Nagpal, Durga Shakti Nagpal, she is an outstanding officer who is fighting for rule of law, etc. That we all know these instances are multiplied all over the country, but let's leave it aside. As somebody said, why should there be a shortage of sand at all in the first place? In a country where there is a huge need for sand for massive construction activity all over the country with increasing urbanization, economic growth, etc., why should you first create a condition where sand mining is criminalized, supply is way below the demand, and then you create a mafia, you create a parallel market, and then regulation, then political interference, then all this. So you can see in many areas where the state organs are dysfunctional. The courts are as bad, as the bureaucracy as bad as the politicians. It's not one who is better than the other. There is a deeper process at work. Everybody has alibis. Everybody is a victim of a vicious cycle. There is no other country, at least among major democracies, sees the kind of disaggregate volatility. When political scientists want to be very obscure and want to use jargon to match the economists and physicians, they use all kinds of stuff. Basically what they mean is, even if the government is in the hands of the same party, about 60 to 65% of the incumbent legislators are getting defeated in this country. Oftentimes governments themselves are changing hands, as Tamil Nadu sees frequently or Kerala sees. But even when the government has not changed hands, incumbent legislators are losing. Either they're not renominated because they would lose, or they're actually defeated by the voters. There's enormous amount of volatility in this country. So there is remarkable change of players, but that's about the only thing. Substantive things don't change enough. Some change obviously, but not sufficient. Political process, and this probably is the heart of the crisis. That's the most heart-rending problem. When you have a problem, the United States allows a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama. Britain allows a Tony Blair or a Margaret Thatcher or somebody else to come up with new ideas, acquire the mandate and therefore the power through that mandate, and bring about the changes. And then changes have consequences, some good, some bad, and again the cycle operates itself. In this country, the political process has become the problem itself. If there is one, I'm a great optimist. Many people all over the country and across the world see me as a great optimist in the face of some monumental challenges in India. If there's one pessimistic statement that I subscribe to, it is this, that the very process that ought to be the answer has become the problem. And therefore, it's very hard to break out of this vicious cycle. And I'm daunted by this, as all of us should be really. Obviously, there are some other things, some of the positive things happening in the country. I don't subscribe to the cynicism all over the country and this reckless abandon with which we talk about how terrible India is. Even in the past 20 years mostly, though the local governments have not really matured the way we hoped because of the structural problem again, not problem of intent at least initially. We created overstructured, underpowered local governments, but nevertheless the direction is right, unquestionably. Voter registration, when Dr. Krishnamurthy and his colleagues, around the time they took over, voter registration was pretty bad. We have demonstrated conclusively 15% errors in rural India, errors defined as right name not included or wrong name finding place. Together the errors of omission or commission are 15% rural India, 40 to 50% in urban India. Umpteen number of massive surveys were conducted very authoritatively, very carefully, without trying to exaggerate the problem. Some people said 100% in urban areas, if you take omissions and commissions. I don't subscribe to that. There may be some local things, but 40, 50% were right. There's significant improvement. The Election Commission, thanks to the work done by many of us and the advocacy and the Commission's own efforts to improve it, it has become much better. Still, the problem has not been solved. The current number is, in rural areas, the errors are about 5%. Urban areas, the errors are about 12%. But mercifully, because of the voter identity cards, etc., the errors in terms of the voting, the manipulation of the voting process has come down considerably. In the rural areas, it's only about 0.5%. In urban areas, it's only about 2%. I'm sure it's coming down even further with better and better identity card. So it's improved. The political process, the heart of it, the elections, there's an improvement. Candidate disclosure, Lok Satta has pioneered this whole work in candidate disclosure. Because in 1998-99, we came out with a list of 42 criminals contesting elections in Andhra Pradesh. These are serious crimes. These are major politicians. One of them had 13 murder charges, and he was acquitted of all 13. So we had a debate whether we should include him as a person in the criminal record or not. Finally, we decided any decent human being would not have been charged with 13 separate murder cases. Even if he's acquitted in all cases, it is something that the people should know. That's the determination that we made, and we came out with that name too. That sent shockwaves across the country. Some friends went to the courts. Finally, in 2002, when the Supreme Court gave a verdict, we had to fight our way every single, just like the current verdicts, recent verdicts, how they resisted. At that time also there was impressive unanimity among political parties. They said, over our dead bodies, we will not reveal our details even as we are contesting as candidates for elective office, which is an amazing position to take. I really don't understand how a political party can responsibly say, our candidates need not tell you what they are about. That in essence is what they all said. But we won the battle every single day. I remember Dr. Krishnamurthy, I think he was on the commission at that time. I argued before the full commission. Mr. Lindo was the chair at the time. Why it should be made mandatory. In other words, non-filing of this affidavit must be a ground for disqualification. That was the key. Otherwise, merely saying you should file, but there's no consequence of non-filing doesn't mean anything. The commission agreed to that. I still remember, now I'm revealing for the first time, now that I'm in Chennai. Mr. Session told me, no, go to court. I said, no, why? First, let's go to the commission. He said, the commission will never give you that order. I said, Mr. Session, if you were the chief election commissioner, would you want me to do you the courtesy of going before you and urging you? He said, yes, by all means. I said, let me do the same thing to this commission too. Trust them. If the commission does not do what is right, then let's go to Supreme Court. And after the commission gave the order, I had a one-word fax. Session does not use emails, etc. He sent a one-word fax, congratulations, to me. This is the first time I'm stating it in any body. So finally, we got the disclosure. And then, of course, government came up with a terrible ordinance. And then again, Abdul Kalam sent it back. Government sent it back within 24 hours. Then we went to Supreme Court. We had no choice but to sign. We went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court quashed those portions which are not acceptable. So we have a disclosure norm in place today. If you remember what the law said is, the amendment to the law, it said that your residence is no longer a requirement and your vote should be open. Now, this is not a very clean and nice and elegant way of reforming the system. But political parties are crying out aloud. They are saying, look, the kind of people we need in government are not electable in our direct election process. Now, we have to get at least some decent people in. We may or may not have legislative strength in their home states in order to get them elected into the upper house. So therefore, we'll do something. It's not a good solution. But nevertheless, it is a cry of despair. As an interim measure, if we don't allow this kind of a thing, if we make everything a fundamental issue, federal issue, residence issue, or something else, then we are messing up the things further. We are not trying to clean up anything at all. Therefore, I supported the government, and all parties, in fact. All parties came together on that issue. But as I said, it's not an elegant solution. It's not really a permanent solution. It's just a temporary reprieve, just to get a few decent people, whether Manmohan Singh or Arun Jaitley or Arun Sheri or somebody else, people who are generally widely regarded as valuable people in public office in our political system. They don't otherwise have a chance of getting into legislatures. And in our constitutional system, unless you are a member of the legislature, you cannot be a minister. So, to me, it's an improvement. There are some things that are now, then of course, Right to Information Act. Every other thing I mentioned and I'm mentioning, personally, I and Lok Satta movement, we have been privileged to be a significant part of that, in some cases perhaps more than significant part. Right to Information, both Aruna and I had the privilege of drafting it because we had the privilege of being on the National Advisory Council, the accident of being there because they invited us. It's not because we really had anything spectacular to claim. But every word very carefully we drafted. Gram Nyayalaya Act of 2009, the law is in place. We worked on it for 10, 12 years. What it says is for every intermediate panchayat or smaller unit, there shall be a local court as an integral part of the independent justice system under the High Court's control, not Nyaya Panchayat, not kangaroo courts, not politically driven, entirely part of the judicial system, but with speedy and summary procedures like small claims courts in the UK, like people's courts in the US for simple cases up to 1 year's imprisonment, up to 1 lakh rupees or more, property disputes and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, in many states, both the courts and the governments are resisting it because we just don't want to move further. So even when the instruments are available, there's always a gap between the availability of the instrument and the application of it to really benefit the country. The 97th Amendment to the Constitution, enacted just in December 2012, I had the privilege of piloting it very strongly. Dr. Kurian, who lived and died in this city in the last years of his life, has been always one of my great heroes in personal life. And for 20 years, 25 years, Dr. Kurian, L.C. Jain, again late L.C. Jain, a great friend, Mr. M. Ramareddy of Hyderabad, all of us have been fighting and arguing for a cooperative legislative framework where the people's right is a constitutional right. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons in this country, it's not adequately recognized, and therefore a constitutional amendment was necessitated. Now the Article 19(1)(c) has been amended to give the cooperatives the same constitutional status as societies and unions, which ought to be there in the first place. Because we messed up, we had to specifically state that. Like everything else in India, despite my very strong advice, the government insisted on writing a chapter in the Constitution on cooperatives. I opposed vehemently, but ultimately they had the power, therefore they went ahead. Mercifully, a High Court recently has quashed that particular chapter, Chapter 9b. They added a whole chapter on cooperatives. I don't know if many people are aware, but that chapter, at least by a High Court's judgment, is now quashed. Now, whether the matter will be carried to the Supreme Court by way of an appeal or not, we'll see. And therefore, many of us filed, including in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, other states, petitions in High Court so that we can prepare down to implead ourselves and fight in the Supreme Court to eliminate the silly chapter. The chapter is a badly drafted one, an unnecessary one. Once you have the constitutional right to form cooperatives under Article 19(1)(c), everything else follows. You don't require a chapter now to tell you how to run the cooperatives. Having said that, you are free to run your cooperatives, like writing a trade union law in the Constitution, which is meaningless. In the pipeline, Lokpal bill, we all know what's happening. I'm an optimist. I believe that in the next few months, at any rate after the next government is formed, we will have a Lokpal law. But sadly, we will not have Lokayukta's law enshrined in the national law, which is silly. I think parties have played politics. They pretended that it's a federal issue, which it is not in my judgment, once there's an international treaty on this subject and there are many precedents, etc. But nevertheless, each state we have to now fight and get something about anti-corruption legislation. Service guarantee bill. Right now there is a bill there are two bills before Parliament. One is the service guarantee bill, the other is the electronic service delivery bill. And I urge the parliamentary committee to actually integrate both, because now after Right to Information Bill Act, every bureaucrat now has dreams of being a member or chairman of another commission. Lieutenant Delhi will be littered with all kinds of commissions if you go at the current rate. So for the same purpose, two departments piloted two bills with two independent commissions, and all bureaucrats being appointed. So I told them convergence is the order of the day. You don't require so many commissions, don't overdo it. Parliamentary committee agreed. I don't know what's going to be the final outcome. There's no debate in Parliament right now, so it's very difficult to say what's going to happen. But I'm certain, again, this will become a reality in the next few months or so. Then Judicial Standards Accountability Bill, many of you are aware of it. I think it's a good step forward. There's enough literature in the world, definitely not in India, and therefore I'm highlighting this point especially. Go back. There are three initial conditions. Poor service delivery. We know even today there's a problem. In 47, I'm sure there are some people who had that memory. For many of us, it's only reading from history books. But I'm pretty sure that the delivery of services is appalling in 47 or 50 or 55. Without a sifarish or a bribe, almost nothing would get done in a government office. If today things are that bad with technology, with greater democratic accountability, 50, 60 years ago we can imagine how things were. Two, there is no sense of citizenship. Even today, an elected public servant is treated as a monarch. You are the zamindar of the constituency. I don't care what happens, but you get this done. The garbage removal in front of my house, to a street light on my street, to water supply to my colony, to the park maintenance there, to everything. There's nothing like who does what. You get it done. I gave you the vote. You are the new Maharaja. You get it done. Oftentimes we forget the pressure under which the politicians operate. The enormous pressure. On top of it, if only we had some sense of, some possibility of emerging leadership locally and ability to really make things happen locally, many of these problems could have been addressed. We chose not to go for that model. But for some dalliance with local governments in the 1960s, essentially, with great success, we gave it up mostly. 73rd, 74th amendments really did not yield dividends because it's a bad model, very poorly structured, overstructured, underpowered. And therefore, in most of India, we haven't given ourselves a chance of setting things right through local governments. So once these three initial conditions are there, the consequences, once again I maintain, I'm making a very provocative statement, the consequences are inevitable in universal adult franchise in a poor, illiterate country. Next, please. Excessive dependence on elected legislators. Vote is the only lever. The local public servant, a clerk or a peon does not listen to you, but the elected fellow has to listen to you because he needs your vote. People understood that. Somehow the new Maharaja has come because of my vote is something that people understood. They have no other source of power. This is the only source of power. Therefore, that lever is available. Therefore, party cadres are required now to get small things done. In a dysfunctional system, instead of improving the delivery, the legislators depended on their own party cadres and their own party apparatus, huge machinery in each constituency to somehow deliver something against heavy odds in a dysfunctional system. Great sacrifice expected from legislators and political workers to somehow get all these things and day in, day out. And this in a democracy after freedom. To think that party workers have nothing to do, no other work to do except addressing grievances, going and picking up petitions and going to this office, that office, do this pyrovy as we call it in Hyderabad, influence peddling. It's a little illogical in a modern economy. As a consequence, the burden of the legislator and the vast cadre network, but even with the best efforts, only 10% gets done. It's a dysfunctional system, basically. It's only a way of trying to tell the people that we're working very hard. It's not about outcomes. I remember Mrs. Sonia Gandhi one day complained. Mr. C.K. Prahalada, Dr. C.K. Prahalada, the late management guru, a couple of Delhi University or JNU professors and I were sitting at lunch, I think. One afternoon there was Indira Gandhi International Conference. And she was explaining her plight. I believe she traveled in Raebareli for 5 days, just the week before or 2 weeks before that. She said, I traveled for 5 days in my constituency. Everywhere I had scores of people gathering around me, and one person gives a petition about something. I try to understand and address that, and then 10 other people, they shout about something else. Another 5 people shout about something else. I'm totally overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I really don't know how to get anything done. I don't understand what an MLA or an MP does. At least in my case, I can pick up the phone and talk to a central minister and get something big, at least sanctioned, and give an impression, symbolically at least, of because I am elected, I can get something big done. But what is happening? The answer obviously is not managerial. It is political. But because that political answer has not been found and implemented, every legislator, whether you are the Prime Minister or an MP or a Chief Minister, doesn't matter who you are, goes through this terrible ordeal. On the one hand, there's unsustainable sacrifice for the party workers. To expect them to sacrifice in a post-independence India is absurd, and therefore they have to be fed. If they can't be fed with money, then they have to be allowed to make money using the state patronage and power. Land grab, police cases, transfers and postings, contracts and tenders, they all have to be playthings, otherwise you cannot sustain these cadres. Increasingly, because good people did not want to play that kind of a role of allowing corruption to feed on itself, they are marginalized. If you notice, look at many legislators in the first two parliaments. Many of them voluntarily stepped aside. Some of them were very young people. They were pretty young when they were elected, and yet they stepped aside because they realized this is not something they would continue with, because things are pretty grim, even at that time. And the people who remained, there was mounting corruption, and unless you had certain infrastructure, and both money-wise and political cadres-wise, you could not sustain politics. Therefore, political recruitment from dynasties and corrupt money bags. Nevertheless, there's mounting dissatisfaction because delivery is poor. And therefore, come next election, you have to now entice people to the polling booths. In Andhra Pradesh, recently there were local elections for the panchayats. There were scores of villages where people refused to vote because neither candidate gave them money. Particularly wherever SC, ST, Sarpanch's offices, they were reserved for these communities. Oftentimes there's not much of political competition, and then there's not much money flowing. There are scores of villages, and it's not an exaggeration. They said, we will not come. It's as serious as that. If we pretend it's not there, then we're only using the podium to attack politicians without understanding the problem. There's a real problem. Whatever be the origin of the crisis, there is a crisis today. We have to understand that. Therefore, money is required. Initially, if one fellow gave money, now 10 fellows gave money. Every candidate gives money. Because money is an equalizer now, every party is offering money. Freebies are required, and Tamil Nadu is the master of freebies. The whole country is learning from you all kinds of things. When Dr. Krishnamurthy was the Chief Election Commissioner, I wrote to him with great anguish. When the color television was offered, I told him this is a watershed. Other freebies, you can link them with the government's functions. Whereas this is something which is completely devoid of any constitutionality. If this is allowed, tomorrow somebody will say, I'll give you a gold chain. Day after, somebody will say, I'll give you 5 bottles of liquor every month. Now tell me, how is that constitutionally invalid as opposed to color television? I gave that argument. You cannot sit in judgment of the government as a party's manifestos. That's not your job. But they have breached a line, and if this line is not protected, there is no end to this process. Please act. The Commission obviously did not have the courage, frankly. They examined it for several months because I wrote it, they could not ignore it. Therefore, they gave me a labored reply of 2-3 pages, which is unconvincing even to themselves. And today we see the consequences. The Supreme Court recently gave some kind of a direction, please examine and all that. I'm sure the Commission will not be able to do much because they failed in the first instance. A terrible blunder was committed when the opportunity presented itself to draw a line between what would be constitutionally acceptable because that is part of the government's legitimate role, and what is an straightforward bribe to the electorate, though given as part of the government policy, which is not part of the constitution or the government. That could have been really, that line could have been at the time built. But we missed the opportunity. Let's hope something will happen now. But even freebies, everybody now is equal. People like Chandrababu Naidu initially said no free power. Now he's saying everything free. From free power to TVs, other things, all kinds of things they're arguing. And they're also saying now at the state level, loan waivers. And free rice, by the way. Tamil Nadu has not yet adopted that, I think. Have you? Oh, you have. Okay. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. Therefore, they also became equalizers, and therefore divisions. Whether you see Andhra, Telangana, or reservation issue here or there, Rajasthan, Gurjas, Menas, these device issues are politically profitable. I'll come to that a little later in some greater detail to understand the nature of the electoral system and therefore the consequences. These three are now the staple of politics. A party abstains from them for moral reasons. That means the party is declaring ab initio that they will not be electable. And to expect a political party to say, I'm contesting in order not to be elected, that is Loksatta's kind of functioning. That's not what parties are about. Parties are there to win. Otherwise, why do you get into politics? Because you believe that you get elected, you can You can influence people's minds, you can design policies, you can implement them, you can change the way society is. That's what politics is about. We're expecting something different in politics, not wise. Next, please. So, vote buying and election experience, you know, one of the unexpected consequences is national parties are being marginalized on account of the quirks of the electoral system in this complex situation. The best and brightest individuals are unelectable. I'll come to that a little later in some more detail. Reckless populism that I mentioned. Emerging local fiefdoms, because it's a local base, it's the local infrastructure, local cadres, and local caste networks that are critical for political gain. And therefore, if I disappear from politics, my son has a greater chance than anybody else, because he inherits the caste base and the infrastructure out of personal loyalty. And that's why parties which are once powerful suddenly are disappearing in constituencies or even regions and states, because the key players in between, the intermediaries, they disappeared. Without that infrastructure, it doesn't matter which party you belong to. Look at Congress party in coastal Andhra and Rayalaseema today. It will probably draw fewer votes than Lok Satta. What happened? Not because people completely turned against it, but because the infrastructure turned against it. You don't have the mechanism to capture the vote any longer until you get them back. Why did Jagan become overnight such a powerful man? It never happened in global history. Never before in the history of elected democracies did one fledgling upstart new party decimate two established powerful parties simultaneously. One party suddenly was decimated sometime from time to time. Or when there was no alternative to one major party, when a new party came like NTR or somebody else, for some time the other party was in limbo. But never before were two entrenched, established political parties decimated simultaneously. The vote he was getting in the by-elections was more than 50%, more than the combined vote of Congress and TDP put together. Many people missed it. It's an amazing development. Why? Because he captured the infrastructure. Not because anybody seriously believed, including the voters of Jagan, that he is a better leader, his party is a better one. But once there is a perception of his being a winner, suddenly all the infrastructure disappeared from this party and went to that party. There's something else operating there. Like Lakshmi Parvati, after NTR's demise, at some time she appeared to be pretty influential, but the infrastructure went to Chandrababu Naidu. And she became inconsequential. By the way, she was flying by the same flight today on board from Chennai to Hyderabad to Chennai. But the point is, there's something deeper. We all have to understand that the infrastructure is vital at the constituency level. Without that, it doesn't matter what you are. Therefore, to think that an NTR or somebody else can come today, MGR, and then make a difference is an absurd one. That day is gone. Those days were possible when there is no alternative to one dominant party. Once both are entrenched, the only model now we are saying is Jagan's model. We have to see whether other states will see this kind of a thing. There are some unique circumstances here, but the issue is the infrastructure of a political party locally. Without that, to win for an exceptional individual, for an exceptional cases may be possible. But as a general rule, it's virtually impossible. I want us all to understand how complex the political outcomes locally are. Next, please. Vote buying, 8 crores for a parliamentary constituency, sir, is a very modest sum. Somebody, he read in a small snippet in a newspaper that I was interacting with you all today. So he came up to me at the airport because there was a 2-hour delay. And he told me, sir, in Assam, in 1994-95, when this young gentleman was a returning officer, an IAS officer, whose marriage I attended now, and as a district collector, he was just recruited to IAS. So he was an Assam cadre officer. It was about 10 lakh rupees for the parliament seat. Just 10 lakh rupees. At that time in Andhra Pradesh already it came to about 1 crore rupees. Now in Assam he says 15 crores is the going rate for a parliament election per candidate. My 3 adversaries in the election to my constituency for the state assembly, they together spent 50 crores. One of them, he himself told me that he spent 35 crores. Now these are exceptions, these big numbers, but 10-15 crores for a parliament seat is perfectly the norm in most parts of India, and 5 crores plus is perfectly the norm in most parts of India for the state legislative election. There are some exceptions. To the best of my knowledge, West Bengal, Kerala and Gujarat haven't yet fallen into this trap. in such a big way, but I think it's only a matter of time. Let's not expect that that will last long, because states which were away from money power, like UP was not really much into money power. Today UP elections are as costly as elsewhere. Bihar probably is less costly, but money is still increasingly playing a role there. So there is a problem. Jammu and Kashmir, I attended a conference some time ago. I think it was the Helka magazine organized a conference. One journalist who was with me was a Jammu and Kashmir person. I asked him about elections. Then he told me something to me was shocking at the time. He said the National Conference paid in the last general election in Kashmir 500 rupees per vote, and PDP paid 300 rupees per vote. I was stunned because I assumed until that time, because the local factors, Jammu and Kashmir, secessionism, Hindu, Muslim, Pakistan, India, other factors would play a role. But it's not true. That's when I realized that Jammu and Kashmir would never secede from India. They have become mainstream India in a political sense, sadly. So there is a real problem. Even in Andhra Pradesh, where I don't know about coastal Andhra Rayalaseema now, if elections happen, what happens. But in Telangana, for instance, despite this Telangana sentiment, without money, there's no chance. Every party is paying money, including TRS. It doesn't mean that everybody is paying the same amount. Some may pay, say, 1,000 rupees some per vote, some may pay 500 rupees. But if you don't pay some significant money, you are not a serious contender. There is an entry barrier. Among the contenders, somebody will get picked up. What it means is large expenditure does not guarantee victory, but non-expenditure guarantees defeat. There are exceptions. In my constituency, my expenditure was 4.5 lakhs. But to expect that to be repeated is a little far-fetched. These are exceptional cases for a variety of reasons. You can't get those circumstances replicated. That cannot be the way forward if you want to transform India. Unless you're looking at a 50-year horizon, people will learn from mistakes, let India deteriorate in some respects, let's pay the price and then come. Hopefully it will happen, but I don't think we have that kind of time. As a country, we lose time. We lose in terms of economy and society and governance. Next, please. So, more expenditure, therefore more corruption, more cynicism, even more money. That's why each election cycle the money is more. Next, please. One is the vote buying and therefore corruption. The second is reckless populism and then the fiscal imbalance. We all understand when Chidambaram talks about fiscal imbalance, about other things, current account deficit, we all understand. But to really make them the popular concerns and to have the mandate to change that, you require a different kind of political model, obviously. And then rise of sectarian parties and politics, I mentioned briefly. Next, please. This third issue, divisive politics, let me take two case studies. AP Telangana issue, Rajasthan Gujar issue. Parties, they are desperate to capture marginal vote, converting fringe issues into mainstream issues. Next, please. This is quickly the voting pattern in rural Telangana in 2004 assembly elections. No, this is both rural and urban. Please remember, in these constituencies in 2004, TRS was in alliance with Congress. Congress actually got much higher vote. Out of the 58 Congress candidates, 48 got elected. And Congress vote share is 24.7 overall in Telangana. That number is a little skewed because we don't have the local numbers for the constituencies where they contested. That must have been close to 40 or 45. TRS got fewer percentage of votes and fewer seats. Less than half of the, in a massive sweep where Congress won hands down in the state, TRS actually won only half the seats. So the electoral appeal is not significant. It was there. We cannot deny it, but it's not significant. Take 2009, when TDP and TRS were in alliance. Again, when Congress alone got 32% vote, TRS in 45 seats got 9.7% vote. They only won 10 out of the 45. TDP out of 69, their alliance partner, they won more than 50%, 39 seats, even when they lost the election in the state. So it's not the TRS advocacy of Telangana that was the dominant factor. You can see clearly. The evidence is pretty compelling. Next, please. This is their actual vote. In North Telangana, when they contested on their own, you can see in each election the percentage of vote. And if we take the, these are all, 2006 is a local election. 2005 is municipal election. You see the paltry percentages, except in some cases, 7%, 8%, 9%. They contest on their own, those local elections. South Telangana, much less, except in parts of Rangareddy, 4, 1.57, 8.97. Hyderabad city, which is really equal to about 3 districts or 2.5 districts, they did not even dare to contest. 0. They did not win a single assembly seat in 2009. They did not win a single corporate seat. They didn't even dare to contest. They would have lost every single seat. And yet, next please. I think the same thing. We can some more details about local elections. Basically, initially Rajasekhar Reddy, in order to defeat TDP, and later TDP in order to defeat Congress, they had to embrace even those 2, 3, 5% votes, because that is the differential between defeat and victory for the party as perceived by them. As results proved, at least in case of Rajasekhar Reddy in 2004, without that they would have probably won even better. But then you're only wise after the event. Before the event you would not dare to take a chance, because the very power in the whole state is now for play, and therefore you are desperate. And a fringe issue became a mainstream issue. What was supported by only 10% of the people became a dominant issue today, and we all know repercussions and consequences today. Next, please. Gurjars and Minas. An 8% population of Gurjars. Vasundhara Raje and BJP, unwisely, I think in 2003, they offered scheduled tribe status to Gurjars, because Jats were made backward classes for voting purposes. Therefore, Gurjars felt that they could not compete with Jats, and therefore you have to now make Gurjars a higher thing, scheduled tribes. Then Meena started rebelling. Vasundhara Raje won the election because she got this extra marginal vote. Maybe she should have won the election without this also, I do not know. But this certainly gave them a comfortable margin. But you all remember the consequences. Delhi was paralyzed. Much of North India, all the streets, roads and rail networks, they were all paralyzed. And you had economic and social paralysis. So again, a fringe issue became a dominant issue because the major parties had no option but to, or at least they felt they had no option but to align themselves with a fringe issue in order to get that extra vote to give them power. Now, is this the price India can afford to pay? Because it's not an issue adequately examined in the country. I'm sure there are many more examples if you examine all over the country. Next, please. Fiscal issues, already mentioned. We know what's happening. Not only is there a loss in terms of money, but also in terms of management. Free power without metering is a classic example of how the whole system is messed up. And electricity is arguably one of our greatest challenges in the country in economic management of infrastructure. I think the total annual deficits in electricity are about 100,000 crores because of bad management. One of the key issues is the fiscal populism ending up in mismanagement and tremendous crisis. Next, please. Electable versus, I made a brief mention of that. For election in our electoral system today, whichever be the party, mainstream parties, traditional parties, we require vast unaccounted supply of money for vote buying and sustaining cadres, a dedicated political machine loyal to the local leader, identification with and recognition as the leader of a caste, community or region in that particular pocket, willingness to polarize the society for electoral gain. Anybody who talks the language of moderation and reconciliation does not find it electorally profitable, and focus on short-term freebies and voters' individual needs. Whereas all of us sitting here as hopefully sensible human beings, we require something different. We ask for heightened sense of ethics and personal morality in our leaders, competence, professionalism and record of service, deep commitment to public good, ability and desire to harmonize conflicting interests, and focus on societal needs of infrastructure, rule of law, human development and job creation. Where is the convergence between the two? And the people who are electable are not fit to govern, and the people who are capable of governing well are not fit to be elected, then there is clearly a crisis. If we don't acknowledge that, if we don't do something to remedy that, there's no point saying a democracy is honky-dory. Elections do happen, they're relatively peaceful, there's peaceful transfer of power, all these trappings are okay, but in terms of outcomes, people don't want democracy as an outcome in itself. They welcome it, but they want democracy also to deliver to fulfill their aspirations in a realistic manner. Yes, sir. Next, please. What's happening to the major parties? If you take the two major parties, Congress and BJP, in the 6 largest states of India, UP, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Bengal, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh, they are increasingly getting marginalized. One of the major developments in terms of long-term trajectory. Next, please. This is just to give the Congress performance since 1989. And wherever they seem to be doing well, they're in alliance with somebody, except in Andhra Pradesh. Now, of course, Andhra Pradesh is a different story. Next election, you'll see a radical change in that number. Next, please. This is seat share because seats are very good in some cases because of alliances or certain factors, but otherwise, you can see the trajectory again. Next, please. This is the BJP. In Andhra Pradesh, at one time, they were doing well only because of the alliance with PDP. Uttar Pradesh, they were doing well up to a point, Kalyar Singh, etc. But later, there's a decline. You can see that, I think that Bihar is the alliance. But again, you can see the trajectory, except when in alliance, they're in deep trouble. Next, please. These are the seats. In the recent election in Uttar Pradesh, Samajwadi Party gained 3.7% of votes relative to the earlier election. Congress also gained 3.04% votes. But Samajwadi got 127 seats more than last time. Congress got 6 seats more than last time. The quirk of an electoral system, where equal gains do not mean equal outcomes. Hopelessly unequal outcomes. And therefore, for a party to crawl out of that hole is increasingly difficult. And that's the reason why national parties are getting marginalized. I put this here deliberately because ultimately, unless the two big parties understand the problems they're going to get in, they're not going to be impressed by our logic of India's better governance. They want their own future survival. That's the reason why this kind of evidence is being gathered. These facts are now. Next, please. Next, please. Go back. Parties are often at the mercy of local strongmen with abnormal money power, patronage networks, and caste connections. They built impregnable modern fiefdoms, local leaders of significant parties. Without legitimate democratic mandate, operating entirely outside party, weaken the party when they switch sides. Suddenly, a party which is powerful becomes totally hopeless in a constituency because one man with an infrastructure has disappeared and everything is gone. It's a very strange new phenomenon. Earlier, party was all important. Today, increasingly, it's the individual who is the party satrap locally who is all important. Next, please. This is self-evident. Next. So, I'm arguing that the current electoral system is actually complicating this whole mess. So, we have to address both. We have to address the initial conditions that led to the crisis. We have to address the electoral system issue. Otherwise, it will take a very long time to be able to find internal correctives without any systemic reform. Next, please. So we require an alternative model. Next, please. I am arguing for a proportional representation model. From a candidate-based model to party-based model. From constituency-based to state-based. High threshold for success to moderate threshold for success. Next, please. Essentially, if you see the bottom thing, the current system is about a narrow but very high base to give electoral dividends. Each constituency is like a separate election for all practical purposes in terms of outcomes. Whereas in a PR kind of a model, it will be a moderate base, moderate threshold, not too high a threshold, but a wide base for the whole state, not a local constituency. And therefore, organization, while it's necessary, it's not so desperately important that the machine is all important kind of thing to a moderate organization, etc. The merits are vote buying will diminish as marginal vote dependence comes down. Competent and honest politicians become electable. Rational long-term policies can be pursued because the loss you sustain by not pursuing short-term populist policies is there, but that's not going to be decisive in terms of your influence later on. Whereas in our current system, if you really pursue rational path, it's decisive. You're going to lose for sure. Whereas here, you still are a significant factor. National parties will be viable in all states. vote reflects voters' views, etc., greater voter participation. Wherever there is PR system, there is 10 to 12% higher voter participation. There is evidence all over the world. Voice and representation to all segments. Next, please. Next. Next. There are a couple of problems. Will PR system lead to caste-based parties? There's always that risk. But no system is perfect in itself. I visited Britain when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister after the Iraq War, when his stock was a little down, just to assess whether in Britain there would be a hung parliament and therefore he would be forced to go for PR system because of the pressure from Liberal Democrats to form the government. I wanted that to happen for India's sake. If Britain looked at its model, then we would look at it much more seriously. When I went there, I realized that local electoral arithmetic being what it is, though he lost Sheen, he was still going to win comfortably, as it happened subsequently, because local electoral arithmetic is different there. But if somebody asked me seriously from the British government whether they should switch over to a PR system, I would say it would be stupid to do that, because the present system is serving them reasonably well. It may be disproportionate, but doesn't matter. What is the purpose of politics? To get the best and brightest into political life, to allow them to emerge as influential leaders, to articulate an agenda and go to the people, obtain a mandate, get into office, and actually deliver on the agenda. And the cycle repeats itself. When all those functions are fulfilled, it will be stupid for them to change the system. As they say in colloquial Americanism, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But ours is broke. Therefore, we need to fix it. It's not that PR inherently is superior to any other system. It's that in a given set of circumstances, you must look at other models which are easily achievable and would have different outcomes, and the incentives are altered. Again, going back to Gladstone, the purpose of a government is to make it easy for people to do good and difficult to do evil. The second thing is, will there be therefore inherent instability apart from the caste-based parties? The caste-based parties, the answer is, have a reasonable threshold. Now, what the threshold is, let the pundits and scholars sit and decide. Do you want a 5% vote in a whole state, 10% vote in a whole state, even 15%, I don't mind. But some realistic threshold instead of this high threshold today, which makes it impossible for you to compete on a reform agenda or an individual of ethics to actually compete and succeed. Change that dynamic. The second is, will there be therefore an inevitable necessity of coalition governments and therefore fractured verdicts and instability? At the national level, it already exists. There's nothing new. At the state level, it's true that in most states we have stable governments right now. Therefore, we have to find an answer to that. One way to do it is constructive no confidence, that you cannot bring down a government unless there is an alternative in place with a majority support. You cannot have an unholy alliance of two opposing factions with completely diametrically opposite views, somehow bringing down the government only because they hate the government. That's one answer. By-elections, you can find a simple answer of minimizing the need for by-elections, but that's another factor which is complicating our situation. In any case, the coalition governments in the PR system are likely to be much more honest in terms of ideas because they have their solid base and based on ideas. And therefore, for you, every day to manufacture that 1% extra vote, you don't have to resort to all kinds of things. But there is a problem. We have to acknowledge that in states in particular, unless we handle it well, there could be a problem of instability. But we have to see overall what happens. Can it be done easily? This is the most happy point. You don't require to touch the Constitution of India. The Constitution makers anticipated this. They never talked about a single-member territorial constituency. They talked about a constituency. The ratio between the population and the number of seats in each constituency should be same throughout the state. That's all the Constitution says. You can have 10 seats in a constituency. That's what a PR system is. And all you require is Recognition of People Act amendment to see how the seats will be allocated. The details are not necessary at this stage. These are technical matters. There are plenty of answers. That's not a problem. But constitutionally, it's easy if only there's a consensus in the country. And the two great parties have an incentive to change it. And all of us desperately need different kinds of outcomes in elections and in terms of governance. One last word. I believe, in addition to that, we have to promote strong local governments in an accountable manner. Not in a Gandhian romantic sense, but in a sense of seeing that vote and public good, they're fused. in public mind. Taxes and services, they are together. And authority views with accountability. Next, please. I mentioned these are two cities in the Bay Area of California. One day I was traveling on this road. To the north is Sunnyvale, south is Cupertino. The property values in Cupertino are 50 to 60% higher than in Sunnyvale, only because the Cupertino School District Board functions very well. And under American law, unless you are a local taxpayer, property taxpayer in that locality, you cannot send your children free of cost to a public school. And there's a sufficient incentive to increase the demand relative to supply and therefore price rise. Alandur near Chennai is a classic example. I forget the name of the gentleman. Bharati. R.S. Bharati. I heard about his work. Just because he mobilized the community, inspired them, mobilized 7-8 crore rupees, got funding as a first mover to implement a first-rate drainage system, sewerage system. The property values from 1,000 rupees or so per square yard went up to, I'm told, 15,000-20,000 rupees within a few years' time. So once you bring in that kind of a synergy between the political outcomes and individual gain, economic or other gains, then the system will work much better. People will know how to punish with their vote. Right now, elections don't have serious consequences. And that's why freebies and vote buying, other things are all important. And therefore, I believe, in addition, we have to really aggressively implement, at least in urban India to start with, because rural India probably we lost a priceless opportunity. It may take some more time, but urban India, where taxation is increasingly the main source of survival of the urban government, and therefore people are now asserting and saying, where is my tax money going? Why am I not getting the services? There's a good opportunity. And hopefully rest of India, where they depend on grants, we can do it. I want it to happen all over the country simultaneously, but at least do it in urban India immediately. J&K, my argument is, had J&K election outcome in the local elections, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, they had a local election. 79% people voted in J&K, without hundreds of thousands of troops. In a state where 10-15% voting is the norm, and lots of violence and bloodshed are seen peacefully. And I think India squandered an opportunity. If the government of India took it upon itself to empower them, transfer certain resources, 1,000 rupees per capita, let's say, and say, take care of your own destiny, I'm sure people would have forgotten India or Pakistan. They would have been busy taking care of their local roads and trains. Even on national security issues, we somehow lost the imagination and the nerve. And I think a great opportunity has been already squandered. I hope even now they'll wake up and do something about it. Next. That's it. So my appeal is, go back to Gladstone. Can we create conditions to make it easy for people in office to do good and difficult to do evil? Or should we persevere with the system where doing evil is what is profitable politically and doing good is what is damaging politically? And can we survive with that system? Or can we prosper as a country? Thank you.
A wealth of knowledge and experience represented by Mr. Oza, Mr. Devasahayam, Mr. Pandiyarajan, and many others, including Mrs. Tara Krishnaswamy and Ms. Elizabeth Seshadri of Lok Satta Party. Now the floor is open for discussion. Would anybody start? The mics to go around.
This question, because you were a civil servant, then you started your movement, and then now became a political party. Today the basic question is, what is this species called political party? Who are they? Question number one. Second is, quo warranto, by what authority are they fielding candidates in the elections, forming government, and deciding the fate of the millions of people in this country? Now, Constitution was given to us by the people. We the people gave the Constitution, okay? We the people have created all the institutions in the Constitution. I don't have to elaborate that. Starting with the President, even the civil services, police services in the Constitution. Political parties are not in the Constitution. We the people have not given political parties any recognition because we had thought of a partyless democracy. I had the great fortune of interacting with one of the greatest leaders, Jayaprakash Narayan. I mean, your namesake. I mean, you are his namesake, JP. He has told in very clear terms, the founding fathers never thought of party. They thought of partyless democracy. This political party is coming into the constitution through the back door. Now when the Chief Information Commissioner wants to recognize them, calling them a public authority, they say, no, we are not. We are not public authority. We are private. We are private creatures. So the question therefore follows. This needs to be addressed. I think if the most fundamental way I said was, you are talking about the best of people coming to the government and running the government. The best of people coming to the government does not need any change in the constitution, does not need any amendment to the Representatives of the People's Act, does not need any electoral reforms. All that is required is this species called political party. What is this? What kind of political parties do we have today? Even the most elementary principle of democracy is not in political parties. Feudal dynasty. Now, with that kind of political parties now saying, we will not recognize anything constitutional. Who are you? Supreme Court, they are asking the Supreme Court, who are you? How can you say criminals cannot sit in the assembly? Murderers and rapists cannot sit in the assembly. We are now jumping around for some rape took place in Bombay, earlier in Delhi. When the rapists are sitting in parliament and assembly, these rapes are bound to happen. Screaming in the electronic media is not to help. Basic fundamentals have to take place. Then they are asking Central Information Commission, when they are telling them, see, read this, and I'll like to inform you, some of you, most of you must not have read that order in great detail. It's a fantastic order. Their argument is not about donations or financial dealings, no. They say, because of the 52nd Amendment, where the anti-defection law was brought in, 10th schedule was brought in, giving enormous powers to the political parties to remove MLAs and MPs. You are wielding tremendous power. You are running the government, so you are a public authority. Other things are peripheral. And they want to bring, in fact, Chief Information Commissioner did it's a very fantastic thing to bring them into the, but they say, no, we are not. We are going to amend. Supreme Court says criminal cannot sit, so no. Election Commission says you have to control the freebies, so no, who are you? Then JP mentioned about this girl, Durga Shakti Das. Well, there's a party has decided to suspend her. It's not the government. Party. One of their senior leaders told this openly. Next day I was also the same channel. When I pointed out to the same fellow was on the kind of panel, he couldn't say anything. He vanished from the scene. He did not come back after that. He said party decided to suspend an IAS officer. Now I want you to tell us, because you are perhaps the only person in politics today who have gone through all these three stages, what needs to be done today? And they don't want any law to be enacted for them. Starting from Krishnamurthy's days, there has been a draft pending regulation of political parties. Those days say, no, we have no law for you. So, with this kind of political parties running the state, now the counter question is going to be asked. If they enact this law, amending this Information RTA Act, and also the amendment saying that criminals can continue, the counter question is going to ask, Part 4A of the Constitution should be declared ultra-virus. You know what is Part 4A? That's where the recognition of political parties come. There may be a move that Part 4A of the Representative People's Act will enter ultra-virus, and political parties may have to be extinguished from this.
I have given a lecture in 1998, Political Parties in Indian Democracy, examining this issue in considerable detail, so I was not going to details. Your questions are more rhetorical than and really elicit an answer, that's right. But the fact of the matter is, Lok Nayak JP was not being practical. However painful it is, political parties have now become globally a necessary form of political organization and participation for citizens. But unfortunately, instead of citizens participative fora, they became, as I said, private estates. In a country like perhaps Pakistan, Bangladesh, that's where the challenge is. When RTA Act was being drafted, I actually inserted a provision to make it applicable to political parties, even without any funding from government, direct or indirect, on the same grounds that the CIC has now mentioned. My argument is that political parties are unlike any other organizations. Other societies don't seek power over others. They don't seek vote. They don't seek power over public purse. They don't make policies. They don't paralyze the society by bungs and rasta rokos. They have abnormal power. Therefore, they have to be governed by a higher order of accountability. I still stand by that. But my wiser friends, they advised me not to incorporate that because the RTA Act would never have been enacted. So in order to get the RTA Act through, I decided to take away political parties. I was hoping that one day an information commission will take this stand and the court will take this stand. That's what happened today. What the political parties are saying, and I'm astounded that the CPM is saying this among others. I really don't understand. I'm shocked beyond belief. Is totally bogus. Can't be accepted by any notion. We're not asking them to give us the internal deliberations about party strategies. We're asking them about A, the membership and leadership choices, how they make it. B, about funding, self-evidently so. C, about the choice of candidates and the process by which the candidates are chosen. And D, we're asking them about the policies they are articulating and the reasons for them. If that much they are not willing to give to the people, then they have no right to exist. But unfortunately, the people in this country have not yet adequately understood the abnormal power of political parties, and therefore the need to regulate. Germany has a federal law to regulate, as you know, very few countries have. But many other countries are in variety of regulating. For instance, United States, earlier never bothered about parties, but now there's a well-structured party regulation as a practice. And therefore the internal elections, the primary elections are legally mandated. And there is also funding for the presidential primary elections. Even in a country like Kenya, where I was an observer in 2001, after 27 years of dictatorship, there was actually an internal primary election for candidates of the political parties, and the election commission was mandated to conduct. And the then president, Daniel Arap's son, lost in one of the elections. His son could not become a parliamentary candidate of the party because the people voted against him. And unfortunately, we pride ourselves in being a great democracy. Most of it is uninformed. We don't even bother about regulating political parties. Therefore, I believe if this law is enacted to amend the RTA Act, we must challenge it and we will succeed. I have no doubt in my mind. We must fight for that. And two, we must mobilize public opinion against political parties. And the only thing they understand is the logic of the vote, and therefore, at least some significant vote share they lose on account of this stand. Then they'll pay the price. But unfortunately, because all parties are together, at least one party, if they stood aside, major party, they would have reaped the dividends. Other parties would have paid the price, they would have been scared. Now, all parties have joined the gang, therefore there is a problem. But I'm not repeatedly urging for regulation of political parties, because whom do I ask? Do I go to Sonia Gandhi and say, you regulate a political party? Let there be regulation by an external agency, and you be controlled by them? Do I go to BJP and say, your party should be controlled by law, and therefore you're not a master of your destiny? They simply laugh us out. It's going to be much tougher than the reforms that are suggested. Ultimately, you have to go to these blocks to get those changes in place. My argument is a PR system gives us a chance to make that happen also. Today, the parties are necessary for an individual to politically succeed. Parties that are structured today. If you want to succeed in this state, you have to go only to DMK and ADM. If you want to succeed in Andhra Pradesh, you have to go only to 2 or 3 parties, every state. And therefore, they enjoy an oligopoly. Once the threshold for success is a little lower, a few credible people in the state can actually form a political party, get 5, 10% or 15% vote, and therefore get seats in proportion to the vote. Suddenly the parties will then be account. Today there is no fear. If somebody deserts the party, all right, so be it. Though it's beginning to happen in some places, desertion of a an important influential person could actually decimate a party, but still a novel phenomenon. So if this system is brought in, that's more likely to happen. I don't really see the parties voluntarily agreeing in this climate for regulation of political parties by next 7 days. If they refuse to even abide by information transparency, I mean, the brazenness is so shocking. I really don't expect these parties to say we would be regulated by law. There is a problem. Yes.
I fully accept your argument for proportional representation. But about the money power, now would proportional representation automatically bring about an end to the influence of money power? I'm not very sure, because I think in your whole talk, there was hardly any mention about the link between the economy and the polity. Can they be separated? Now today, what is the source of this huge, big money that is flowing into the electoral system? It is big business, huge big business. And in the age of neoliberalism, when there is a completely no holds barred accumulation of wealth and the inequality has become totally unbearable, we have, I think, something like, we hold the fifth rank in the number of billionaires in the world, while we are 136th, 139th in Human Development Index. Now, we have allowed this kind of business to grow, and it is this business that is feeding this electoral system. So without curbing that, how do we expect the electoral system or the political system to escape from the clutches of economy, of this economic system? Now, maybe even some years ago, this big business was financial aristocracy, whatever you call them. They were perhaps satisfied with influencing policy making from outside, just feeding the political parties. Now today they are coming directly into policy making. So many of them have become many of the crorpatis in the parliament and the legislatures. The different lists have been given. Now they are either directly representing this huge big moneyed section, or they themselves are sitting there now. So in this kind of situation, without curbing that huge big money power, is there any hope of bringing anything ethical, anything moral, anything that would go with the constitutional values?
No, I understand your concern. But as I say, the impossible best is the enemy of the possible good. And we try and address one problem, we try and look at a much bigger problem than both problems they're left unaddressed. That is the problem. The first is liberalization. Can we now change the model dramatically enough to alter both our political and economic landscape? I don't know. I'm not even going to the merits of it. If there is a trajectory of development that we as a country and the globe across the world has followed, and with certain modifications, that is the only dominant theme accepted by the elites across the world and by the young people across the world. For me to make an argument now as a part of political reform for a different kind of economic model, it does not really take me far. I have a problem here. I'm not questioning this system, that system, which is better, which is worse. I'm not really going into all that. That's an economic argument, and I think people like Mr. Ravi and Dr. Samandan, they are better qualified to go into those issues. The second is, it's no longer true that big business is behind the funding of political parties. It's one of the significant shifts in the past 15, 20 years. Earlier, big business was the primary source of funding. Today, politicians are so wealthy individually, through ill-gotten resources, that they have more disposable resources at their disposal than the big businesses. Certainly some big business money is flowing into political coffers, there's no question about it. But that's not the main driving force today. Believe me, there are many politicians in India who can They can't write a check, but they can easily generate 1,000 crores for political purposes. Not in neither Tata nor Ambani can generate 1,000 crores just as a cash. But is that easy? So that paradigm is shifted considerably. And not merely the big ones with 1,000 crores. Most of your legislators in many of the major states today, they command 100 crores or 200 crores with consummations. Consummations. We have to understand what's happening. But the fact is, no, it's no longer about economic activity. This itself became an economic activity. Sandmark. The third is whether PR will actually make an impact on this. Significant. Not totally overnight. Nothing will end everything overnight. Now, that's not a third proposition. But the central issue here is the marginal vote. The candidates and parties are compelled in our electoral system to capture that 5,000 or 3,000 marginal vote to put them past the post. And they don't know which is 3,000 votes, which 5,000 votes. Therefore, they have to cast the net wide. Evidence shows that in many states, 50 to 60% of rural voters are given money by every party. Not that 50-60% people are voting for that party. Obviously, they're not. Every party is paying to everybody practically. And then they're choosing one of them because they need some marginal vote. Therefore, I close my nose and still vote for party. This is the general pattern. It's not a choice between the available best. It's the choice between the two worst. We're only choosing which is the less worst option. That will be radically altered in a PR system.
Dr. Narayan, just supplementary to Dr. Vasanthi Devi's question, she's a former Vice Chancellor, incidentally. Some businesses, such as real estate and liquor, are closely identified with political funding. Wouldn't her point apply to those industries at least?
There is organized funding racket, regular corruption chain in certain areas, contracting, for instance, transfers and postings, police cases, and businesses either indulging in black money traditionally, particularly the real estate, for instance, or businesses where government's heavy licensing hand is all pervasive. These are all important sources. But the point is, now it's gone beyond that. There are probably about 10,000 politicians in India, 90% of whom probably command about 50 crores or more. So it's on autopilot now. Even if you don't fund a single rupee to these fellows, they can sustain this for 2 or 3 election cycles. That's why in my more irrational moments, I keep hoping for 3 successive elections in 3 years quickly, so that they exhaust the money without any guarantee of returns and security of tenure. And then they say, I might as well use my money elsewhere in economic activity rather than political activity. This is too unprofitable and too risky. So the problem is now much more pervasive, certainly. And then once they get into power again, they get money. After why are they getting into power with this kind of money? Again, they know how to make money. It's become an industry now.
Yeah, one small question. Just small, yeah. This PRI, when I think a little deeper, instead of actually reducing the power of these individuals who today have made the political parties as what they are, very powerful. I mean, they really don't care about internal democracy or anything like that. Now, won't this actually strengthen them rather than,
This is the most powerful argument against PR in the current.
That's right. So
you're absolutely right. That danger is very real. Therefore, ideally, PR should be combined with party regulation. Why am I not talking about it? I'll talk about it in a closed room like this. I will never talk about it publicly or to political parties, because where do I go? I go to a Jayalalitha or a Karnanidhi. I go to a Sonia Gandhi or K. Advani or somebody else to plead for change. Now, can I go to them and say, my job is to cut off your arms, please help the country by removing your limbs? They'll throw me out. Therefore, what I am arguing is, ideally that should happen. Even if that doesn't happen by law, it will eventually be forced on them, because today Jayalalitha's power or Sonia Gandhi's power is a monopoly or oligopoly power. Once they realize that you and I can be viable political formations without their blessings, and they will lose us if they don't really do what is right, and it's only a matter of time. They will themselves change. We have to believe that the parties are rational animals. They are not cricket people. I don't believe that the political parties or leaders have taken a vow to destroy India. They have taken a vow to do whatever it takes to get into power and stay in power. In an altered scenario, if they realize that their power and their sustenance in power, they depend on different kind of behavior, they will also change. Even if they don't change, there is enough challenge now possible. Today that challenge is not possible. But you are right. In an ideal world, you must ensure that there is, as Dr. Desai argued, internal democracy mandated by law, externally supervised. But in the real world, when the fellows don't even want to disclose under Right to Information Act and they're actually amending the law, they're even talking about amending the Constitution, I think for a reform advocate, it will not be a very strategically wise approach. What is ideal is not necessarily practical in a given context. But your point is absolutely right. The danger is real, and some parties will do that. But my point is, let them be decimated. Let us trust our people. Let us keep on shouting from rooftops and say what happened.
How did this 2003 happen? So many reformist stuff which seems to have just happened in a jiffy.
No, in 95, we got in Andhra Pradesh a law enacted, Mutually Aided Cooperative Societies Act. My friend Ramareddy, who has been a great advocate of that, the founder of the Cooperative Development Foundation, he's often asked this question. So he answered that one day, no, none of the great things. It's just that Mandi Manishi, a stubborn man called NTR came to power, and a fellow called JP became Secretary to Chief Minister in Andhra Pradesh at the time. So one day I told NTR, among other things, that look, we require to liberate cooperatives in the government structures. NTR said, Jayaprakash Garu, I really don't know. I don't know if you can follow. No, I'm thick-headed. I don't understand all this. Is it good? I said, trust me, it's good. He said, good, do it. So sometimes a set of circumstances.
You won't attribute it to Vajpayee. I mean,
No, certainly the government of the day deserves credit.
reforms happening
The government of the day, Vajpayee, Arun Jaitley was the minister for much of the period. For some time, the disclosure issue, Ravi Shankar Prasad and Ravi Shankar and I, we had continuous fights on that issue. Ravi Shankar actually one day, he told me with great pain, he said, JP, I expected you to support at least one thing I have done. They actually, in the ordinance that was rejected finally, they brought in one particular provision by which a person charged in a court of law with two separate offences, 8 kinds of offences for classified heinous offences, would be disqualified, which is actually a huge move forward in a country like this where they're saying we're not going to give information. I could not support him because already in the public mind there's a confusion between disclosure and disqualification. Arun Jaitley at the time, who was out of the government, he was arguing that these fellows want a Tehsildar to disqualify a political leader. What is the rubbish? So I had to persistently say we're only asking for disclosure, not disqualification. The moment I supported a disqualification provision, however worthy it is, people will be confused and my argument will be lost. Therefore, I had to keep quiet. So he asked me one day, I told him privately, you're absolutely right, but for this reason I could not support it. So it's true, individuals did matter. And opportunity came like the health I mentioned, like a few other things. And parties did a few right things. So I do believe that the parties are not terrible. I mean, maybe I'm very biased in favor of political work across the world. I do understand their constraints and difficulties. They do an extraordinarily difficult job in a very complex society of reconciling conflict and interest. Therefore, I am much more sympathetic. Empathy is the word. I understand their concerns. I don't appreciate what they're doing. I believe there are better ways. Because there's no leadership of real stature, they're adopting the path of least resistance. But it's not that they're all terrible people who want to destroy India. I truly believe that.
Disclosure is a very important part. You know, this Supreme Court judgment and then resultant amendment, filing all kind of affidavits, reams of paper, it has turned out to be a damn squib. Because earlier I was electing a chap without knowing he's a rapist and a murderer. Now I am electing him knowing that he's a rapist and a murderer. What should have followed was they should have immediately, the chief electoral officer is here, Praveen, I think he'll agree with me. The scrutiny period should have been expanded from 3 days to 3 weeks. You're keeping the ballot papers, ballot boxes locked in for 2 months, 3 months. There should have been a proper scrutiny, opportunity for the people, public to give objections that this fellow filed a wrong affidavit, and he has got far more, many more criminal offences, much more properties, and some authority must be empowered. I am not saying whether the returning officer should do that. At least a state electoral officer can do that. Even the election commission can do that. Give him an opportunity to examine and disqualify him at the threshold. What's the use of all this nonsense going on that a criminal contests with all the money, he gets elected, and then he go to the High Court, and his tenure is over, he becomes a finance minister, home minister, whatever minister he is, chief minister, enjoys powers. What is kind of tamasha that's going on?
You're absolutely right, sir. But
I am told election commission has recommended it, but then government is not
no,
amenable.
my appeal is twofold. One is, we now live in a country where all political parties together said, after an incumbent legislator is convicted of a serious offence, it could be murder, rape, it could be a little less serious, but still 2 years just imprisonment, etc. Convicted in a court of law where the conviction rate without confession is 6%, and it takes a decade or more typically in a criminal case. All the parties ganged up and said nothing but it. After conviction, now you're talking about scrutiny of an affidavit filed. So, that's the problem.
If this has been done, he won't be there.
No, but who will do it?
This has been done at the threshold.
No, who will do it?
There at all.
No, if that threshold they are not agreeing, this threshold, why will they agree? Who will do it? Who are the ones to do it?
Election commission can.
No. Unfortunately,
There are two chief electoral officers of states here. Those are former CEO and the Pradeep Kumar there.
What are you saying?
Affidavits to be basis for disqualifying people. See, the law doesn't provide that. As far as law is concerned, even if I am charged, I am eligible to fight elections. So if I file a wrong affidavit, or if the affidavit says that I am charged or not charged, that can't be a basis for disqualifying a person. Only thing you are doing a crime. So any IPC crime, for that FIR can be filed against you. A charge sheet, police can investigate. Charge sheet can be filed, and after you are convicted, then you can be disqualified because you have been convicted of electoral offence. So, a Tahsildar, as you said, as Mr. Arun Jaitley or whatever Ravi Shankar said, a Tahsildar is not fit enough in our judicial jurisprudence to say that this person is convicted or this thing charge sheet is wrong or right. It has to go to the judicial process for him to be convicted. The law has its
Fellow says, I have been convicted, I am a criminal case.
So the law allows it. So that's why the disclosure thing came. We are putting the publicly. The NGOs are publicizing it. So even after that, you are ready to vote for a person. I mean, that's your hell. I mean, that's the problem.
no, that's the second point. Even as I was fighting very strongly for disclosure, I knew that this was only a symbolic. I was the only one who was telling our friends, don't go gung ho over this, it's not a revolution, this is a small little step. The reason we chose that is, it's a soft underbelly of the system. Nobody conceivably could defend criminalization of politics. They would be defensive about that. We wanted to put the parties on the defensive, have some instrument for us to play with, so that people can price open the system. What are the consequences of this? Two things happen. One, certainly after that, parties are no longer nominating new candidates with a known criminal record. But the established candidates with criminal record who already sanitized their records or established deep roots politically, they continued unchanged. So I knew then also, I remember B.S. Raghavan and others, when I took the delegation to the president at the time, some people from Chennai, many in Delhi and other places, they all were gung-ho. They said, no, this is a revolution. I said, it's not a revolution, it's a small little step. It will not lead to anything significant, but still it's an important instrument. It's a matter of principle for us to fight and get it. And sadly, I was proved to be right eventually. I don't think that's the answer, because the incentives, for the reasons I stated today, are completely wrong in political arithmetic. Please remember, when Lalu Yadav was at the peak of his popularity, though his wife was the chief minister at the time, he contested in a parliamentary election, I don't remember which year it was, against Sharad Yadav. Sharad Yadav, Madhepura. Sharad Yadav, he went on a fast saying that the election should be countermanded because there is massive rigging. Election Commission rejected that plea. They ordered repoll in several polling stations, but they felt on the whole the election was not vitiated. But despite that, Sharad Yadav won the election. That was when Lalu Yadav was at the peak of his popularity. Years later, Lalu Yadav lost his popularity. Eventually he lost power also. He and his wife lost power also in Bihar. And this time, his nominee, Pappu Yadav, was the candidate from the same Madhepura. He won hands down. So the incentives for election are different altogether. Until you address that, mere disclosure or something else will not really change the reality. That's why I'm saying the redefinition of the incentives in politics, that's where the key is. Mere legal or otherwise laws exist. Criminals can't be contestants, and you must not spend more than 16 lakh rupees for assembly constituency, more than 40 lakhs, all the laws are there. But that doesn't mean anything at all.
It seems to me that hope will eventually come from the local bodies, because state governments are competent to make rules and laws about local bodies elections. I do very clearly foresee that some state governments will say that you cannot contest for a panchayat or a panchayat union or zilla parish or whatever if a charge sheet has been filed against you. I think the process will have probably begin to change because politics is not very strong at that level. To conclude, recently MPs decided that a person facing a charge, just facing a charge, cannot be on the sports body. You must have seen that. But they don't.
You require a higher ethical norm to govern the sports body, but not the country.
Yeah. But I do have. I'm afraid I don't share your pessimism about local bodies. You seem to be at the moment rather pessimistic about the dynamics of local bodies.
I'm a great supporter, sir.
But you're
Great supporter. I'm only saying I'm a great supporter of local governments. In fact, among the people alive today, I am probably the most valiant defender of local governments. My friend LCJ probably qualified for that when he was alive, but I am arguably the most ardent defender. But the way we messed up the constitutional framework for the rural local governments, I don't see a significant framework emerging there. Therefore, I am arguing urban is where we should really do. From Panchayat Raj, move towards urban areas. This is a growing area, economy, taxation is the base. Therefore, there's a greater possibility of assertion. Problem is, rural local governments, you and I are arguing. The people are not arguing. It has become the advocacy people, the NGOs dream, but not the people's dream. Because people think the local sarpanch is as corrupt as anybody else. It's not a correct argument, but their perception is this rascal is also spending 1 crore, and there are panchayats where 1 crore rupees is spent. In Andhra Pradesh, one panchayat, 5 crores was spent. 5 crores. In Nadikudi panchayat of Pidugurala area, Guntur district, 5 crores was spent. That's of course an exception, but still there are many panchayats where in recent elections 1 crore was spent. People see that. And people see local corruption as more venal because it's very visible. People also are more jealous about local corruption because it's equal. Therefore, they can't tolerate that. But a big fellow is corrupt, it's okay. I mean, he's a big fellow. So there are many reasons, cultural, societal, etc. Therefore, rurally, it is we who are fighting, but not the people. Whereas urban, there is evidence to show that increasingly the taxpayers and voters are demanding. They say, where is the service? Why is it not happening? You can use that to recharge the citizenry and create local framework so that accountability. But that's what I'm arguing. I'm not a pessimist at all. I'm a great defender and supporter. That is the best measure for the country. Had we done it 30 years ago, none of this would have been necessary. Because we messed up all this and can't mature overnight, you require that and this.
This is related to local bodies, local. So, sir, you are aware about this 73rd Constitutional Amendment and Panchayat Raj. Now, can you say, sir, whether it is due to the excessive powers given to the bureaucracy, these local self-governing bodies are sidelined? That is one point. And secondly, the question of reservation to the local bodies, whether it is practically working at ground level or not, and as such it is improving the functioning of the local bodies or not.
Both are good questions. Now, there are two great enemies of the local governments, the MLA and the IAS officer. Pardon me, it's not about an individual, it's about the systemic framework. Both are challenged by decentralization. The MLA who is used to a certain set of circumstances, partly because of ignorance, he thinks it's the only way the system works. I have to do what local government should be doing to get their vote. Partly because that's what gives them the leverage to make money. For both reasons, he doesn't really understand his legislative role. He only becomes a disguised executive, and he's quite happy. And the real executive at the local level, the IAS officer and the bureaucracy at large, they feel totally disempowered if local governments are struggling. Therefore, the resistance at the state level is phenomenal. Phenomenal. And the chief ministers, in order to control legislators, depend on bureaucrats. A collector, essentially, the chief minister's agent to keep tab on the MLA and control him. I mean, I'm putting it very crudely, but that's the way chief ministers see the collectors. That's understandable. Or the superintendent of police, for instance. In this climate, it's very hard because the entrenched establishment is totally opposed to that. Reservations is a very important issue. The way reservations are done, it's rotation and very massive numbers, and therefore, once I am elected, almost certainly next time I am not eligible. Therefore, two things happened. The incentive for re-election disappeared, and leadership development came to a standstill. If each time 70% people are dislocated, another set of faces comes. It's all nice for us to talk about that. Whereas leadership is a lifetime's accomplishment. People have to learn, they have to grow, they have to understand, they have to earn the respect of their peers and public, and then grow in stature to the next level. That has now become impossible. We haven't found a model which is compatible with competent leadership emerging, even within the framework of affirmative action. So both these complicated. I didn't go into details, but there are many structural reasons. But substantial part is the constitution overstructured. Every other provision, you shall, you do this, you do that. 243G, the legislature may enact a law, giving some. Here suddenly everything is very, very indecisive, very vague. Everywhere else is completely structural rigidity is there. If the state wants a different model of local governments, with a complete integration between the panchayat, interministerial and the district, it's not possible. The constitution forbids it. What rubbish is this? Why should the state say the panchayat sarpanch cannot be a member of intermediate panchayat? Who are you to tell me that? That they said. But to what extent they should empower, they never said anything. They said you do whatever you like. It's a disaster, well-meaning disaster. Evils don't happen always because of evil people. A lot of good people are responsible for a lot of evil.
It was unwilling crafting.
Unwieldy crafting, and people who have no sense of money is a great friend of mine. I keep telling him all the time. He's well-meaning, but he hasn't got it.
If rotation is removed, what are these?
Yeah. Now we have, for instance, Tamil Nadu is admitting two terms, etc. So some things can be done, but the way things are today, I'm pinning greater hope in urban local governments for the reasons I stated, because there is ultimately citizen assertion is here. I don't see citizen assertion in the village there. Unless you transfer 1,000 rupees per capita or 2,000 rupees per capita to the village, make the village the master of their own destiny and say, now you deal with that, there's a local government. Then people will start thinking, because there's money.
Might be worth saying that one of the two key pillars of Lok Satta, one is good governance and the other is decentralization. So that while that is not the topic for today, at a later time, if it's of interest, decentralization is certainly an area of expertise, and we have a lot of both literature and work that has gone into it, experiments that we've done.
Even there you would have noticed I inserted local governments at the end, because I am a passionate advocate. In politics today, there's almost nobody. The only man who has significant passion is the President of India, but he can't make an impact. He's really committed to this. He understands, because he's a true politician. He understands the way forward.
The local bodies can become strong only when you make them the third tier. Now it is not the third tier. It's two tier and subsidiary of the second tier.
Absolutely.
There should be list 1, list 2, list 3 in the constitution.
Absolutely.
Only then you can have a finance commission distributing money all across the country. Now it is working as subordinate of the state government. State government is not working as subordinate of the central government. They are independent entities.
Absolutely right.
That kind of autonomy, if you don't bring, or district collector as the president or something with only this kind of power, then you can have strong local bodies.
You're absolutely right.
That model itself is wrong. The 74.
On 88 February, Rajiv Gandhi held collectors' conference, if you all recall. I made a presentation in 88. I chose deliberate topic of delegation of power. And I told the Prime Minister, who was by that time evening 7 o'clock or so, he must have had a 14-hour day already. He was a little tired and exhausted. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, a district in India is larger than 90% of the countries in the world. Suddenly his voice widened. Then I argued very vehemently. Of course, he had his arguments opposing that initially. We had a 45-minute duel, but finally he agreed. The point is, if we allowed them a free play, fair play, over 30 years, it does not happen in 1 year, one cycle. It requires to mature. People also must learn from mistakes they commit in choice of leadership. They must see that the vote has consequences. Right now, most of us, like for instance, why did the Coastal Andhra or Rayalaseema people who are obviously so opposed to division of the state vote for Rajasekhar Reddy and Chandrababu Naidu when they opted for Telangana? They thought vote had no consequences. It only had one consequence of putting your man in power. People must be forced to learn that voting has consequences. Electoral choices have profound consequences. Right now, we have not learned that lesson. It's all about Rahul Gandhi or Modi. It's not about what happens to the future of our own lives. That's the problem. So local governments need time to mature. We never gave them that time. But when they were given an opportunity for 10, 15 years, they did a remarkable job in many states. In Andhra Pradesh, I remember that fantastic work they done in rural areas. In terms of education, in terms of community development, in Gujarat, in Maharashtra. Superb work done even well into the 70s and early 80s. But eventually they were all destroyed.
Very interesting that postulate which you had of this concept of infrastructure, which is as distinct from the leaders. Why in our country this the local self-government leaders didn't really emerge as that infrastructure? And what does this constitute? Does it keep changing? You know, this stuff that you said, which migrated to your YSR son, for instance. It really, you know, the first time I'm seeing someone postulate this. What would you call it? How does it get formed? Why has this not become that kind of questions I was really asking?
I can only give my personal experience. Take 1960s of Andhra Pradesh. When I grew up in a village, I went to a Telugu medium school, etc. Outstanding local leaders, Pinamneni Koteshwara Rao, who died recently, but he was a doyen of local government. Jaranga Vengal Rao, his whole life was Panchayat Sarpanch and Jilla Parishad Chairman, etc. He was more powerful than ministers as Jilla Parishad Chairman. Kotla Vijay Bhaskar Reddy, another man who emerged from the local governments and became a major leader. You can name many such people. The infrastructure remained with them because they had the patronage. They had not merely the position but actual leadership role in influencing events and therefore inspiring people and giving them a sense of direction. And therefore most of the cadres were with them. Once that was eliminated, the cadres are now based only on patronage, nothing else. Now patronage networks, they operate only as long as the person whom I support has the power. It's very difficult to retain somebody with the idealism in this climate. Even in Lok Satta recently, in 7 or 8 panchayats, Lok Satta people got elected in Andhra Pradesh without spending a single rupee in a climate where the neighbors are spending 15-20 lakhs in that village. But one of them, one of my people, actually spent 7 lakh rupees in his village. He actually gave money for the war. At least he was honest enough to come and admit to me. And I asked him, why did you do that? He said, sir, first time to enter, if I don't pay money, there's no chance at all. Once I enter, because I can afford this, once I enter, I wanted to prove my mettle and then win elections repeatedly. Bad logic, bad argument. But the point is, even Loksatta felt compelled to do that. I'm grateful that no other person did it, but he is one chap who did it. None of my candidates for the assembly did it, which is amazing. But one of my fellows who actually did it recently, just 1 month ago. So this is the kind of climate we have created. He won by spending money, yes. Which is sad.
He won, sir.
He won.
Okay. Should we interpret that this shifting of infrastructure in favor of a particular individual leader is mainly due to some sort of mass psyche among the people that potential leader will emerge into power?
No, see, basically, if there is a shift because of, in Andhra Pradesh, for instance, once Rajasekhar Reddy died, Reddy community, which is the dominant, I am not going into real politics, which is a significant factor in Andhra Pradesh, disproportionate to their numbers because they had the infrastructure of power for decades. That community, for whatever reason, shifted loyalty entirely to Jagan. Jagan also managed to get the minority vote assiduously cultivating certain groups over a period of time, for whatever reason. It has not. These two together would amount only for 20-22%, let us say. It's not a winning vote, but once there is a feeling that they shifted, definitely Congress is out, because both these are total Congress bastions. Once Congress is definitely out, all the Congress infrastructure went automatically.
That is a good comfort of mass cycling developing in favor of negative.
No, whatever. But the point is, this is one startling example. But in general, the parties are no longer in command, increasing. I'm not saying it's universal trade, but you can see the direction. It's a very discernible direction. What's happening is clear as day.
If the patronage question is an area of interest, actually, Dr. Vasudeva Devi's son, Narendra Subramanian, has a book on populism and the rise of Dravidian parties in Tamil Nadu. It's a little dated. It's, I think, 1996 or something published. He talks at 91 extensively about this very infrastructure hierarchy and patronage system. It's working.
He also thought you were a little too harsh on Tamil Nadu. And I think,
No,
in the sense
I
that
don't mean to be.
I
If I was, then I apologize for
say
that.
because by universalizing, see, there are constituencies, for instance, in Tamil Nadu. I've run for the parliament, I've run for the assembly. There are constituencies where not a single penny was paid to those days. And I can bear testimony to that. There are constituencies where up to even 5,000 rupees in some pockets got paid to the voters. But someday that recognition not being there.
But the point I'm making is, A, the broader trend is pretty dismal.
Which is fine, yeah.
B, increasingly such people who are willing to stand by ethics, they are most unlikely to win, increasingly. They are getting marginalized. That's the broader point I'm making. That the fact that there are still some people who, by the strength of their personality, credibility, local loyalty, they win, it is there. But that's no longer, what should I say, that's no longer the pattern on which we can bank any kind of reform. We cannot say, therefore tomorrow if all good people contest, things will change. Is not a very accurate assumption. That's the point I'm making. So for that reason, sometimes I come out as harsh, but I have the greatest sympathy for politicians, believe me. When Jayalalitha in the last tenure, she was very harsh on employees. I wrote a column in the Economic Times in praise of political incorrectness. She did what was necessary because the biggest challenge in the country is the employees. The corruption, insensitivity, delay, harassment. Now politicians are bearing the brunt of this. Nobody dared to oppose. Jayalalitha fought and she lost, ultimately, electorally. Shantakumar in Himachal Pradesh fought and he lost electorally. To some extent, Chandrababu Naidu tried to fight and he lost electorally. Now Chandrababu Naidu is telling all the employees, please forgive me for all those things. I will not ask you to work. I will not ask you to deliver. I will not curb your corruption. He's actually saying that. So no.
Yeah, and also in the same breath, you should say that while, as far as the electoral scenario is concerned, you can be harsh on certain states because of the excesses that are happening. He also, in the same breath, talks about Tamil Nadu being a model for good governance, relatively speaking.
Still service delivery is better.
Despite this,
It's a big point. The point I actually want to make was, for instance, two people sitting in election commission make a huge difference to the way elections got conducted in Tamil Nadu. The same myself, who face the brunt of the money power in the parliament election, in the assembly election. One of them is actually Mr. Ravi and another lady called Amuda, two IAS officers, could actually control money flow and block by whatever was at the command of the same guys, similar guys, IAS officers, who were there in the same election commission in the earlier elections. But it didn't happen at that time. It happened this time. And again, there's the same system which allows for such people to be able to do that, right?
What
So
it also
curbing
means
of money power.
what it also means is that your adversaries have not perfected the art of transferring money. Without election commissions, seriously, increasingly they have learned nowadays. In Andhra Pradesh, the self-help groups are the root. Money actually goes to the bank. Complicated things are created. Very, very complicated mechanisms. Others will learn from them quickly. And
It was a large extent.
exactly. So the novelty value, the surprise value. But that's not sustainable, nor can we bank on. No, the short point is, election commission, with due respect to the commission and the officers, they are outstanding, and because the commission is able to conduct elections with reasonable degree of impartiality, the democracy in the country is safe. But the election commission and technical efforts and the normal legal mechanisms, you cannot improve the quality of elections. It's a very sad but real state. Session, post-session, people talk about it. Believe me, there is absolutely no change in the outcomes. Not because session is bad, but because that is not the route through which you transform a democracy. A political crisis cannot be handled by an administrative mechanism. It has to be handled politically. We want administrative and judicial solutions to political crises. It's a very preferred Indian route. That cannot really work.
I think we could go on for a couple of hours more, but like all good things, this must come to an end. Concluding remarks by our Chief Political Coordinator of the Centre, Mr. M.R. Venkatesh.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, when he started this interaction, he said it's an unusual gathering, and logically it turned out in the last 2.5 hours or so, it was also a very unusually absorbing interaction. It's now my pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks. I thank Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, our special guest for this evening at the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy, to interact with us on towards electoral reforms, money power in electoral politics and campaign spending. As a founder leader of the Lok Satta Party, he had several insights to offer, and on behalf of the Centre, sir, and on behalf of the directors and on behalf of everyone from the Board of Management, I sincerely thank you for taking your time here and spending with us to throw some light on these issues. I'm extremely thankful to Mr. N. Ravi, Director, Kasturi & Sons Limited, and member of the board of the Hindu Center, for taking his time to come over here and guiding the discussions and prefacing it with some very thoughtful remarks in his introductory speech. I thank the other invitees who have come down here despite their other preoccupations, particularly two former chief electoral officers, Mr. D.K. Oza and Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy, former chief election commissioner, and our present chief electoral officer, Tamil Nadu, Mr. Praveen Kumar, and other former IAS officers. A special word of thanks to Mrs. Vasanti Devi, and several others who, despite their other preoccupations, made it possible to come over here, including Mr. Pandirajan. I'm also thankful to senior editorial people from the Hindu and business line who participated in this interaction. Mr. Jayant, managing editor of the Hindu, and Mrs. Rashida Bhagat, and other colleagues who came over here for this interaction, and other members of the media who are also here. I would be forgetting in my duty if I don't mention the special effort that Dr. Malini Parthasarathy, the director of the Hindu Center, has taken to galvanize and catalyze these kind of activities. A special word of thanks to Dr. Malini Parthasarathy, who readily agreed to this interaction, despite her other preoccupations elsewhere. She readily agreed that we go ahead and hold this discussion. And a special word of thanks to Mr. Ravi again for really putting it together, helping us to put it together. We have a very distinguished musician with us this evening, Mr. T.M. Krishna. I also thank him for his participation. And just as a small aside, if I may indulge, today also happens to be the 5th Shraddhanjali of Sangeeta Kalanidhi, Gana Saraswati, late Srimati D.K. Pattammal. As we invoke the Ashtalakshmis for our own well-being and prosperity, if only we could also invoke the Gana Saraswatis, maybe we could have some light on how to go about tackling the issues with which we are preoccupied this evening. Thank you one and all again for making this interaction a very fruitful and a very meaningful one. Thank you.